Am I in the right meeting?
You are.
Okay, good.
Yes, you're right where you belong.
Okay, perfect.
Okay. Your background's much prettier than ours. There she is.
Hello.
Hello, everyone.
I love this color orange behind me.
Okay, that's much better. We're learning the tricks and tips.
How many people do you expect today?
Well, we have like 90 some odd registered,
Wow.
but you know how that is.
Yeah.
We'll see how many people show up. Hopefully more.
Yep. Top it off my head. Whoop, there we go. Perfect.
I'll be happy with 50. That would be amazing.
I'm still hearing from schools, like I just heard from Riviera today that they had input meeting on something and they had like 46 people. They love it. They're going to continue to do this. Like their parents are showing up.
Yeah, I think it's a great
because they don't have to worry about what they're wearing.
Correct.
They don't have to find babysit and everything for their kids. They don't feel like they're talking to a group when they're on a screen. So the parents like it.
Yeah.
Oh,
It's more productive.
My curls are... Got this one right here.
So, Javon, so we're going to start out with faces, and then you're going to share the PowerPoint.
Oh, good. So we'll just be a little space at the bottom when we talk.
Yes.
Good. They won't see me reading my notes.
No.
No.
No, and that's okay. And it is going to be, it's okay to have it be organic.
Well, you know, all of these answers, all of them are on the district site. Like,
don't say that.
Don't.
No, but I'm going to say at some point, you know, that they need further information, that there is. And, you know, I know they don't have time to leaf through it all.
No, they don't. And it's not in a family-friendly manner that it's out there.
And it's only in English for some of it.
Yeah, yeah.
So that's a problem. Oh, my hair is crazy.
So we kind of, you're going to be translating today, Dr. Mella?
I was just going to say, who's translating what I'm saying?
Nobody.
I'm going to let people in 2 minutes, and then Jenny will be live. No.
Okay,
PowerPoint.
I'm going to mute myself. I'll shut up.
No, don't shut up.
Remind me to unmute myself if I start talking, though.
If you see our faces go, then you'll know.
That means I'm mute. We can't hear you.
Stephanie's in. Should I let her in?
Yeah. Hi, Stephanie. You're muted.
All right, got it.
Hi. So what was it you wanted to share?
Well, if everybody's maxed out, I was going to share this screen for a stop meditation. But I'll just do like calm breath or something.
Okay. Okay, great. Sorry about that.
That's all right. I'm flexible.
Well, we're just, this is our first one.
Yeah.
So, you know, and I'm going to try, I am going to watch the time. And so when we get to, and who knows, maybe we'll wrap up the questions earlier.
Yep.
So, so we'll see. We're going to start letting people in just a couple minutes.
Well, I've grown to love Zoom because with C4C and Space Coast Mental Health, we now have access to lots of people, right? Easy
Right.
to log in. And, you know, one of the things with the school counselors was our trainings are during their workday. And now it's recorded and they can log on and
So, share links with me too. I'll share them out. For some reason, on my personal Facebook, I'm not seeing your stuff like I used to.
okay.
So
Don't ask me how to make that work.
So send links to me and I'll share them with my counselors so that they have access too.
My niece just moved here who's 21 and has made our website functional. I found this whole like lost list of people emailing us. We didn't know where those emails were going. You know, we're a bunch of 40-plus-year-olds who don't really do tech. And so having this 21-year-old who's like, oh, look at this, and I'll centralize everything. We were all like deers in headlights at the last board meeting. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I know. That's why I'm thankful for Javon.
Yeah, is that your 21-year-old or equivalent?
Yeah. Equivalent. Because she has to deal with a 50-plus-year-old.
Yeah. Yeah.
Actually, 50 plus.
Yeah. Well, it's nice. You know, that's why connecting with multiple generations works. We can share our wisdom and it flows both ways.
Stephanie, before we get started, the other person you see on this call is Dr. Mella, and she is our director, Javon and ours director.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you as well.
Stephanie Bird. She works with the organization Counselors for Change. Actually, she started this amazing group, and she has been so supportive with our parents, with our school counselors, with everybody.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. I taught for BPS for a number of years and found my greatest power came with counseling. Like just.
And where did you teach when you taught here?
Meadow Lane, primarily.
Oh, okay.
Loved the school and the administration, but wanted to do this. So I have a private practice and connect with a bunch of other private practice therapists who volunteer with Counselors for Change to do some outreach.
Well, thank you for how you're helping us out still.
Yeah, you're welcome. We love it.
Okay. Okay. Welcome everyone who's joining us. We have a couple minutes till we get started, but Javon is letting you in. We'd love it if you shared your camera. Oh, it's so good to see some of these familiar faces.
The masked bandits.
Oh, there they are. Yes. Well,
I'm trying to get my camera working.
I know it's. We understand the technology. Take your time. We have about one more minute till we're going to get started. But we just couldn't be happier that you're all joining us today.
Oh, there we go. Can anybody see me?
Is it, John?
John, yes, I'm sorry.
I see you, John.
Oh,
Yes.
okay, good.
I see you and I hear you.
That's always good too. I think
Yeah.
sometimes, depends on who
Yeah.
you have.
Now, just so no one's insulted, we probably will be muting all of you at some point. Just because if you're like me, you start talking to people or you make comments that maybe you don't want everyone to hear. I'm just saying. You never know. I'm Ginny Gleason, for those of you who don't know me. And I am thrilled to be here. And we are, I'm part of my other half. The boss is Javon Blum, and she's handling our technology today. And so, and this is our first parent leadership team meeting in a virtual setting. So I can't tell you how thrilled we are
And
to,
scared.
to be doing
And
this.
scared. We're gonna screw it up at some point.
No.
Yes, I was thinking about all this at 2 o'clock this morning. So we're going to do our very best. But what we want you to know is that this is a meeting that's a little different than what we usually do. We wanted to answer some of your questions. We wanted to get started doing that. So we have experts here today to help answer some of those questions. And I just want to say too, we may not answer them all, but we're going to take notes and we're going to do everything we can to find the answers and to provide you information in a follow-up email after this meeting. So just so you know that. So Javon, do we want to start sharing the power, or are we still letting people in?
We're still letting people in.
Okay.
You want to do a little song and dance?
I can sing and dance. I can. I was telling somebody today that I miss being in person. I know that as a presenter, that's probably, I'm better in person. Although I do love seeing all your faces. This helps me a lot. And I know we're probably not seeing every face, but this does help a lot. And we appreciate it. I want to tell you too, let me introduce the people who are going to be our experts today. And I don't know where they are on the screen, so I'll ask them to wave. The first is Dr. Mella. She is Javon and I's director. She's our boss.
And I want to know how you're defining the word expert, first of all.
On all good things.
Well, she's our expert from leading and learning, which means nothing to everybody on this call, but what that means is that's where curriculum, that's where she supports principals. So she's very familiar with what's happening in our schools. And then our next expert from leading and learning is Sherry Bowman. I know she's on the call. She may not have her camera on. But are you there, Sherry? But she is from the Office of Leading and Learning as well, but secondary. So she covers middle and high school. So she'll be available for those questions. And then our other experts from our government and community relations, they're the people that handle so much of the communication that goes out. And I think they've been working 24/7 since March. I'm just going to say that. And they are our masked beauties on the screen, and Nikki Hensley and Kat Allen.
Hey, Court.
And when we first started talking about this meeting, we were actually sitting outside. Javon and I decided to sit outside and have a meeting so we could take our masks off for a minute. But we happened to encounter Nikki as she walked by, and we said, hey, we want to do this. We want to bring everybody together, but we want to start by answering questions. And we received so much great support from them. So we thank you for being here. And then finally, at the last 30 minutes of our meeting today, we're going to have Stephanie Bird, who is a licensed mental health counselor. She is the creator of an organization called Counselors for Change, and she's going to give you some tools, some self-care tools, because we want you to know that we acknowledge that this has been a difficult time for parents. What you're juggling is unbelievable, and we know that. And not just parents, grandparents, caretakers. We know you are all going through a lot with all that's been happening in our world, in our school system, with your children. So we just want to acknowledge that. And we thought it was important to share tools with you to help you through. So I'm so excited. Javon, are you still letting people in?
I'm still letting people in. Are you able to see the waiting room if I share my screen?
I am I'm not able to see the waiting room.
Can you see the list of participants?
Participants, we have 75 participants, yes.
Okay, so if you watch that, then when they ding dong in, you can let them in.
Okay.
How about that?
Okay, let's give it a try.
Okay.
So we're going to start with our PowerPoint. Thank you all for being here. I can't tell you how happy we are. All right, so I think we sort of went over part of the agenda already, but welcome. I think we've done that. And we're going to go over some meeting guidelines, just a couple questions that are going to be answered by the experts, and we're going to have our self-care piece, and then we're going to close. And just so you know, this meeting will be recorded and to share with those who are unable to attend, or if you want to hear some insights again, and we will be posting it, sending it out to you. We'll make sure you get it.
Oh,
So we,
wait. When I admitted someone, see, I told you we were going to screw this up.
no, we're not screwing it up.
It advanced a slide.
So the big thing with our kind of what we want to do today is to make sure your mic is muted, and just because while we're talking, and questions are going, we want you to use the chat room. We really do, because, and I will be monitoring the chat room while Javon handles the presentation. So we'll try and keep up with that. But what we want you to know, the survey that we sent out to you, those questions are being used today, and we have made them part of our presentation. We have provided them to our experts so that they're prepared to answer them. But certainly we know if more questions come up, we will definitely provide you with them.
Okay, well, I hope that this works. We just found a really cute video to show you all. As parents, like Jenny said, as adult caregivers, as grandparents, as any adult supporter of small children and big children, we know how incredibly tough it's been. And I'm speaking from experience because I have a 13-year-old daughter. I mean, that's challenging enough. And then you throw quarantine and e-learning on top of it and working at home full time. And there were many times when I thought I was going to lose my mind. And we just wanted to acknowledge all of the hard work and the support. We could not have done that without you all and the support that you provided at home. So here's a quick thank you.
I'm hungry. I had so much time to spend with my boys.
Watch it, watch it.
How is it?
What?
Oh, hey, you okay?
You did touch the food.
Okay, take attendance.
Yeah.
Thank you, Claire. Okay.
Who's Mary Jane Pedersen?
She was the first Black female college graduate.
So hopefully you feel the love because we're definitely sending it your way. So we're going to move into, like Jenny said, we really appreciate you all for taking the time to answer those questions. We asked you about challenges and successes and other topics that you would need to know in order to help your students this year. And we've asked our experts, our government community relations team and our leading and learning team to come and answer them as best as they can. As you know, in this situation, things are changing every single day, every single hour. So we're going to try our best to answer with information as transparent as possible as we know it right now. And like Jenny said, anything that we don't know, we're very good at following up, and we will get back to you with those questions. So use that chat box for us. So this is, oh, can you see Dr. Mella? Okay, on my screen I can't see Dr. Mella, but here again, Sherry Bowman and Dr. Mella will answer our leading and learning. So the managing of our schools and principals, those types of questions that come up. Oh, there she is. All right, so here was the one that was pretty popular. What safety protocols are truly being implemented in our schools?
So I will go ahead and speak from the elementary level position. As I was jotting down some of the protocols that are in place, I was like, wow, we've put a lot in place. No wonder our principals and teachers seem so overwhelmed. But let me just, like I said, I jotted them down. So let me just read you several of them that I see when I go out to schools. A lot of the extraneous furniture and clutter has been removed from classrooms to allow for more distancing, which was not a bad thing. A lot of our schools had a lot of stuff in them. So to be able to clean it out is a really good thing too. Desks have been turned in the same direction so that students are not facing each other. The hallway traffic patterns have been modified to minimize face-to-face interaction. So you'll see a lot of dots on grounds that students have to space themselves apart so that there's distancing and people aren't traveling close side by side. Plexiglass barriers are being used when appropriate in front office areas, and when teachers or counselors or speech therapists are working one-on-one with students where they have to have them closer, then we have plexiglass dividers. School schedules, including arrival and dismissal protocols, have been designed to minimize congregation, so I'm sure as parents you've been a part of that. Water fountains are restricted. They've got signs that are restricted just filling up water bottles and cups. Hand sanitizer is available throughout the school in all classrooms, in all social areas, and on the buses. All staff are wearing face coverings. You might see shields, you might see face masks, but you'll see coverings on all people. Bus drivers, cafeteria staff, and custodians have been trained in cleaning protocols and procedures. The air conditioning is actually running before and after building occupancy to allow for additional air circulation. Visitors are not permitted on campus and are restricted to just the front office or by appointment only. Students in grades 3 through 6 are required to wear face coverings when not social distancing, and students in grades pre-K or VPK up through 2nd grade are strongly recommended to wear face coverings when not social distancing. And believe it or not, I feel like, you know, that was the one that I thought, oh my goodness, how's this going to take place? But the students are doing a great job. Like, they are so compliant and really trying hard. It's wonderful. Disposable face masks are available at all of our schools. A misting fogger is available at each school. Separate place in the clinic has been set aside for students who have to go to the clinic who are showing any symptoms, who are sick. We give them a face mask to put on. They're put in the clinic and a parent is called to come get the child immediately. Students are expected to wear a face mask while they're on the bus, and they have been assigned to a seat no more than 2 students, and preferably, if possible, with a family member. Touch pads where the students usually touched in their code in the cafeteria, those have been eliminated, and so they're just saying their names out. Serving lines in the cafeteria, if you go through our cafeteria lines, you'll see a whole lot more prepackaged things available for the students than just open meals. Students who are ill are encouraged to stay home, and so when parents say a child's staying home because they're sick, this is not counted as against them in any way in their attendance. It's an excused absence. Students who exhibit any symptoms are sent to the clinic immediately, and they must stay home for 10 days. They can only return if they have a negative test or their doctor has signed something saying that they're okay to return to school. Students are spaced 6 feet apart in the cafeteria. So when you go in, all the tables are turned in one direction or sort of laid out in single file, and the kids are sitting on both ends of the bench because they will need to obviously take their mask off. So there's a lot of spacing. Field trips haven't been eliminated until further notice, and the playground equipment use is prohibited until further notice, which is really hard for some kids because at some of our schools they have brand new playgrounds and we have them roped off. The poor kids, it's like dangling candy in front of them. They haven't been able to get on their new playground equipment, so that's pretty sad. Singing is only permitted outdoors, and the administrators have been trained in COVID response protocols, and that is when a student's feeling sick, it's like a flow chart of what they do when students are in contact to a case or COVID positive themselves, as well as employees. They've been thoroughly trained flow charts of what should happen if those things take place. So those are just some of the things. I'm sure I didn't think of all of them, but a lot has been done. There's a lot of training, for students. A lot of time has been taken up front with hand washing and procedures in the classroom throughout the school. They've been practiced and repracticed, and constantly reminders put out to the students, because it's really a habit that needs to be formed, and we're taking habits of many years and trying to change them with kids and adults, which is difficult. So I'm not going to say it's perfect, just like I sometimes walk out of my office and say, oh my gosh, I forgot my mask, and turn around and come get it. It's a habit. And so we know that, and we are very not lenient, but acceptable for students to make mistakes, and just to have a lot of teaching and reminders.
Dr. Mello, we have a question. Did you say that if a student is homesick, it is an excused absence?
Yes, it is. If the parent calls in, I'm keeping my child home. We did that because we don't want parents to worry about attendance this year and send sick children to school. So if they are sick, the parent says, I'm keeping them home because they're showing these symptoms or whatever, then it is excused. It won't count against them.
And that's with or without a doctor's note?
Yeah.
Okay.
This year.
Right. Is there any? Sorry, I was muted.
And I see that is at all schools, yes.
Okay. Ms. Bowman, or?
It's at elementary. Secondary will have to speak for theirs, but when I say all, I'm speaking from elementary point of view.
Sherry, can you add anything to that? How about Kat or Nikki? Can you add anything to our safety protocols?
Well, you did a great job of covering those, and from everything we've understood, it's priority this year to keep your children at home if they feel ill, and we are going to be very flexible and graceful. I think that goes across the board, not only, as Dr. Mila said, for elementary, but secondary as well.
Yep. And I'm seeing some of the questions there. If a parent calls in saying kids has symptoms, does the child now need to stay home for 10 days? And the answer to that is yes. That's no different than if we send a child home from school with symptoms. We just want to make sure that anybody who has these symptoms is cleared before coming back to school. Another question is asking if we keep students home one day for severe allergies. Yes, the same thing, because you might not know their allergies at that time. But if a doctor says, hey, it's allergies, they can go back to school. I'm sending you with a note. It is excused.
Am I muted? There's also some more questions.
Do you want to move on to, are they ones that we're going to be covering, or?
It looks like some with COVID on process. We're getting into those, I think, in the next two questions.
Okay.
Okay, great. So let's move on to the next question.
Just real quick, Jenny, do you want me to go around the corner and see where Sherry is?
I was just going to make a call to her.
Okay,
So,
I'll just slip out for 1 second.
Okay,
I'll
great.
be right back.
Thank you so much.
Okay, next question. What are the procedures if a classroom or school-wide quarantine occurs?
So we'll take this one.
Thank you.
So first and foremost, we want to tell our parents, and Kat and I are both parents with kids in our schools. So we are going through everything that you're going through. And sometimes, we don't have all the information that we'd like to have either. Things are constantly evolving. And we are constantly reviewing processes and protocols here. So, we welcome the questions, and we will answer them as best and fullest as we can. In terms of procedures, it's really helpful if you go on, we would strongly recommend you go on our COVID-19 resource page, and you can get there from the BPS homepage at brevardschools.org/COVID-19. And that will give you, everything from a helpful health screenings chart that you can work with your child, flow charts that we're using, which we'll get into shortly, our health and safety plan, our reopening plan, which has great detail in it, and then this colorful chart, which is our parent notification process. So let's go through what happens when we get word that an individual in a classroom has been symptomatic or tested positive, more so in the case of a positive test. There is a process in place that every school is following and holding to, every principal working in tandem with the school district, their directors like Carol Mella and Sherry Bowman, and others, and as well as the Department of Health. We work very closely with the Department of Health in all of our cases, presumptive and positive and otherwise. If a student or an employee is testing positive for COVID-19, we will be notified. That is the hope. The hope is that the parents will contact the school and the teacher, or the child has been sent home. And as you just heard, if they're being sent home with symptoms, they're not coming back for 10 days unless they get a negative test result.
Or a doctor's note.
Or a doctor's note. So what happens in the case of a positive test in a classroom is the DOH is notified immediately, and the school leadership, principal and others, begin work on their process, and that is contact tracing. And so the first and foremost, we remove the kids out of the environment if we need to. And in a lot of cases, and Dr. Mella, please chime in here, but in a lot of cases, we will move them to another part of the school, to a clean classroom. We shut their classroom down for 24 hours. And after that 24-hour period, custodial teams will go in and do a deep cleaning of that classroom before kids return to the classroom. So that is, generally speaking, what is taking place. And behind the scenes, contact tracing is being conducted with the school to figure out, with the teacher, everyone trying to figure out who this individual would have contact with over a 15-minute period of, in a 15 minutes or a longer period of time with their cohorts. From there, the determination is made with the Department of Health of who was a direct contact to a case and who wasn't. The individuals, the students or staff that were considered direct contacts, identified as direct contact to a case, will receive from the school through the DOH a Department of Health letter, letting them know that they have been identified as a contact to a positive case, and giving them directions on what they need to do to quarantine. And then those students or staff will go into quarantine. And they will move to, and Dr. Mella weigh in here, e-learning from home in most cases.
The classroom's closed down for 1 to 3 days. If the students are just put out 1 to 3 days, we actually go to, those students who have computers go to e-learning. Those students that don't, we have sent little booklets home with them that they will use for 3 days to do their academics. If it goes beyond 3 days, on the 4th day, we'll start distributing computers to those who need to check them out.
And that is in the case, I'm sure many of you saw the case about Gulfview Elementary. That is exactly what we did. We assessed it for 3 days first, and then we made the determination to extend closure. We closed the school down and then extended the closure for a week to allow everybody time to just heal, recover, come back healthy, and able to get back to work. Going back to the Department of Health letter, you say, okay, so you've notified the kids and individuals who are direct contacts to a case. What about my child who didn't get a Department of Health letter but is in the same classroom? So they were not a direct contact to a case, but you will get a letter from your school principal, letting you know that while in the same class, it was determined that they are not a direct contact to a case. Therefore, they should come to school, and that you should monitor symptoms at home, as you're doing, hopefully on a daily basis, and we will be doing that obviously as well. If symptoms arise, we send them to the clinic, and the process works as we said before. They will be sent home immediately and asked to quarantine.
Can we take a pause and answer some of the questions that are coming in? Sherry, are you on the call right now? Sherry Bowman? She's our secondary voice. Are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, great. I wanted to kind of go back a minute to a question about middle and high school distancing at lunch. Someone asked the question that it doesn't appear that middle and high schoolers are distancing at lunch. Can you speak to that?
The high schools that I have been in, I've been in middle schools. I was at Southwest yesterday. I've been at Cocoa High. They have the kids distance and they wear their mask until they start eating. They're all facing the same direction. And now there are some tables, I'm going to say that is not exactly true, because there are some tables where they're 6 feet apart, so they are facing each other, but they are 6 feet apart. But the tables that are real thin, they're all facing the same direction. And they wear a mask until they eat. There is at least 1 seat between each child.
Okay. And I know, and just keep in mind, we're talking about high schoolers. So, you know, I know that our schools are doing the very best to make sure everyone follows those rules.
Well, even Mr. Wilson was watching. I mean, he has 7 through 12, so you know, I was in there when it was the middle school, but he was really on the kids to follow the rules.
Great. Thank you for answering that question. And we had, where are students going to get tested so they can read?
Yeah, we've been directing them to for the families to contact 211, and 211 will direct them to their nearest testing facility.
And all of that information is outlined in all of the letters that are sent out. So when people are notified via a letter that they need to quarantine, not only does it contain information about what does quarantine look like, it's not going out to restaurants, it's not, you know, going to a cousin's birthday party, it's truly a quarantine for a specific reason. And it also gives information about testing and what to look for, what happens next. So they're being provided with the information of what do we need to do to make sure that we're really watching this closely.
And so we had a question where a student was sent home and tested negative for the test, but could not return until the 10 days were over.
Jenny, I think I'm answering a lot of the questions for you in the box. A doctor's note is acceptable. Someone had asked that. And someone had asked about you've got to be within 6 feet for more than 15 minutes, whether you have a face covering on or not. And then someone asked how long the letters, and really we're at the mercy of the Department of Health. But in my cases, in the schools where I've had it, it has come out like within the 24 hours. It's been very fast.
Oh, even faster.
Because they don't want those students to come back.
Yeah, honestly, the one thing that we really want to make sure that we're sharing with parents is when there's a case that's identified, we have a BPS rapid response team. Nikki's on it, myself, probably. I'm not sure if Dr. Mila and Dr. Bowman are, but there's a team of people that's, you know, quite substantial that covers technology, that covers, you know, food services, that covers all the different areas, student services, you know, kids that have ESE. And we work directly in collaboration with the Department of Health. We evaluate every single case as it comes. We help every principal with the notification processes, with the template letters. So our schools and our response team and our Department of Health are all working in collaboration with one another. And even though we're in the midst of a pandemic, I want to let you know it's working well, it's working smoothly, and we're very pleased that so far we've only had one school with an issue. And again, Gulfview, this is how we're going to, you know, we would rather be proactive than reactive and end up with a super spreader event that we could have done something about. So,
and it is working so well because parents are doing their part. They're checking their kids' temperatures. They're not sending them to school if they're sick. They're coming to get them, you know, as soon as we say, oh, they might have these symptoms. So it's definitely a partnership, and it's working so well because not only what we're doing, but especially what the parents are doing on their part.
I will share with you, I was on, so our response team meets every night at 5 p.m. and we go through the case of the day that we have worked on. So we are working on cases and communications out to families all day long as they come up. So at 5 o'clock, we just wrap to talk about those cases, answer any questions that we may have or another department may have, and it's basically a quick touch base call. DOH, the Department of Health, is on that call and can answer our questions for that as well, and it really is a well-oiled machine. I can tell you that yesterday, the CDC issued new indicators for schools on how to mitigate COVID-19 in the schools, and the Department of Health officials told us last night that our plan and how we've put it into action in Brevard Public Schools has put us at the lowest risk level because of the way that we are managing and mitigating both positive cases, illness, and the process that comes when we've got those situations where there are a single case in a classroom or multiple cases in one classroom, multiple classrooms, and we're having to make those decisions. And Catherine's right. Golfview is a great example of, yes, it's unfortunate we had to close a school and that we had to extend that closure, but we did it proactively. Everything was pretty seamless. There were a couple of kinks in the morning. We had media out there, obviously. It was the first school to close in Brevard County, so it is a story. But everything that's been handled, and kudos to Principal Russell, she's amazing with how all of that was handled at Golfview. So, we look to that as a template for how we're handling everything else. And, for those of us who are on these 5 o'clock calls at night with our leadership, everything's really in lockstep right now. And that's what that's what you want.
Great. All right, let's go on to the next question. And while we do that, I want to just answer one question. I see, what are we doing with our students who are homeless? I will say that our students that are homeless, they have parents in most cases, and they're following the same guidelines that we're all following, I assure you. Okay, what's that next question?
Okay, are schools going to close for cases of COVID and reopen over and over?
Okay, I'm going to take that one. Yes, is the short answer. The truth is, the health and safety of our students and staff is not something we're willing to negotiate with. So we're really hopeful, again, that we're, a month into the school year, and so far we've only had, one where we saw indicators that there was some additional spread happening, and there was something we could do about that, and that's what we did. So is it unfortunate? Yes. Are there processes in place to address that at any given school that may happen with? Yes. Will we make sure education is continuous? Yes. Will we make sure students have access to food? Yes. Every service that every school provides in any given day, there is a process and a plan in place to make sure that we're able to provide those processes, whether the school is closed for COVID or whether it's open and functioning.
Excellent. So what should I do if I notice my school is not following the safety protocols?
Well, I would recommend that you reach out to the principal. Obviously, they might not know what's not being done there. I mean, they're trying to be aware of what's going on their campus, but sometimes they don't see all. So reaching out to the principal is the first step for sure, because they can't take care of something that they're not aware of. So we're always available beyond that, but if someone contacts our offices for anything, we reach back to the principal, or we direct them back to the principal, because it's something that needs to be solved at the school level. But know that if it's not solved at the school level, we are always available to help out as well.
Fantastic. So I think we kind of covered this, but do we just want to sum it up one more time for those that, so we've had some new folks come on. What is the absence policy now when students are sick? You want to, basically, we've got excused absences. We'd rather have 6 students at home. Anyone? Okay, I think we've covered that one well.
I think grace and flexibility, as the superintendent's been saying, has been infused into the absence policy. So you just gotta trust that. I don't know, Sherry Bowman, did you want to? I think the question was the absent policies in the secondary schools mirror the ones in elementary. Is that correct?
Yes, the whole district is using the same policy. When a child is sent home from the clinic, those are coded as a Q, which is counted the same as a doctor's note. When a parent calls and gives the symptoms of something that could be COVID, it is coded with a Q and it is counted as a doctor's note. All the other absences that kids normally already had are the same. There's parent excused note, there's court, there's all those that still count. The big one that's been added is the Q. And the Q is used anytime it could be COVID related. And I say could be because when we send kids home from the clinic, we don't know. We're being precautious. And so those are coded with a Q and will count the same as a doctor's note.
Fantastic. Okay, when will the COVID plan be reevaluated as far as it goes for mask policy, parents on campus, recess, e-learning, those types of things?
It's actually being reevaluated all the time, believe it or not. We are looking at best practices coming out of our schools and hearing how our school leaders are handling things. While we're not making updates to the reopening plan per se, we are sharing out those best practices and we are discussing with leadership and our board members feedback that we're getting from our schools, from our community, from our district offices of how things are going. So we are constantly looking at and measuring ourselves against if what we put down that first, when we first launched our plan in July, is still working. So as we go along and as we watch how COVID goes along in our community, we'll adjust as necessary, but we are taking guidance from the DOH when it comes to the virus and the spread of the virus. I will tell you, we've got bars opening up this week. We've got a return to sports. So there's still a lot to come, and the possibility that we could very easily be back where we were in July for another 2 weeks. So we take all of this into account before looking at any changes that we would consider making, and we're discussing it all. But right now we're sticking with the plan.
Excellent. Jenny, anything you need to add before I move on?
Well, there was a question about, and I felt like.
Are you muted?
No, I'm not.
Okay.
There was a question or a comment as well about how we keep referencing GolfU. And I felt like it was more about the community at large. How are we, keeping everybody safe as well, not just GolfU, and how are we limiting the spread? I feel like a lot of those questions were kind of answered, but we're doing everything we can within our system, within our school system. And certainly the community at large has to take some responsibility as well.
I know, Jenny, I think that question was also getting at class size because a lot of our schools, I think that they're saying they're overcrowded. How can we space kids out when it's so crowded? And right now we've gone through what we call a 6-day count where we confirm the amount of students that have showed up at school and we form classes. We have to keep an average at the elementary of 18 in pre-K through 3rd grade, an average, and 22 in 4th through 6th. So right now we just went through the process to confirm the numbers and we just posted 25 or so more positions out there as openings for elementary. We are in desperate need of teachers because obviously once we have a few more teachers, we can space kids out even more. So that is a concern. We're doing the best we can. We've got many people who don't have classrooms in taking care of students and trying to space out students. And then a lot of students have stayed home and are e-learners, which has allowed us to space students out as well. But you should see a shift in that as we get more teachers in, which the ads were just released to do that.
Can I answer for secondary?
Please.
Okay, in the secondary world, in middle school, we have to stay at an average of 22, the same as the higher elementary grades. In high school, we have to stay an average of 25. However, that counts our e-learners. So just like in secondary where they have e-learners that are learning from home, so it is de-densifying their campus. In secondary, it's doing that also. The classes that I have been into, the e-learners are learning synchronously with the brick and mortar students, and there's fewer kids sitting in the class because of the e-learners that are on the computer talking to the teacher through the computer. Our teachers are phenomenal. I have been amazed at what they are doing out there, teaching both kids on a computer and kids in front of them at the same time. I'll tell you, I couldn't imagine how it was done, and I have been shocked at how good they are at it. So in the secondary world, our e-learners are counted in our class size. So our classroom, if there are e-learners, has fewer than the maximum number of students in it.
Great. Thank you, Sherry. There's a question here that says, just to recap, if I keep my student home one day due to seasonal allergies, do I need to take them to the pediatrician and get a doctor's note?
No, that could be a parent note. In a secondary world, that can be a parent note.
Yes. And then there's a question about siblings. If there's a sibling at one school that's being quarantined, what about the sibling at the other school?
We just answered that one in the queue. Yes, they are quarantined as well. So that is part of the contact tracing that we're doing to determine if they have siblings either on the same campus or at another school, and then that they are notified and asked to quarantine as well.
Great.
Okay.
What's the plan to get our children back on track academically?
Can you repeat the question? I'm sorry, I didn't quite hear it.
What is the plan to get our children back on track academically?
Secondary world, we are using our CARES Act dollars, and schools all submitted a plan, and they're using all of their CARES Act dollars for extra duty pay. So currently they are doing progress monitoring through Reading Plus and a program called MAPS. And so they know the student's level. And we just took those same assessments in February. So we can compare and see if there's any lost learning. And we are going to be using our CARES Act dollar for extra duty pay to tutor, to do Saturday schools, to do whatever we need to do to help the kids get back on track. We will assess again in January, and we will continue with whatever our level is at that point. Our plan is at the end of this school year, we will have the kids back where they should have been had they gone to school for that 9-week period.
And at elementary, I was muted before and I was talking, sorry about that. At elementary, we upped our diagnostic a little sooner than we normally do, because the quicker we can get on this, the better off we'll be. So we do give all the students the iReady diagnostic in reading and math, and this data will be used to identify skill gaps that need to be remediated. Intervention will either occur within the core instruction, depending on how many students have a deficit in a skill, or through small group interventions. We have spent a lot of time with our principals on what scaffolding will look like. And what we mean by that is we have to continue to teach the standards for the grade level that the students are in, because we don't want them to fall behind in those. However, at the same time, we need to remediate on the foundational standards that help develop that particular standard that we're working on in the grade level. So we've taught them different strategies and trained them on different strategies of what scaffolding should look like within the core. We've also been given additional CARES Act money for our academic support program, and that will be different at every school and what it looks like. Sometimes it's additional tutoring, sometimes it's after school, sometimes it's on Saturdays. We leave it up to the school to service their students on what's best, but we have been given additional funds for that. So that's what we've been doing. Believe it or not, as we look at the data, we knew there was going to be gaps, but I was surprised that it wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. So that's a good thing. But we know we've got a lot of work to do, to especially that third 9 weeks or fourth 9 weeks from last school year, when the students might have a deficit in those skills. So those will be remediated right within the core of what we're doing this year, so it doesn't slow down the progress of this year's mastery of the standards.
Wonderful.
Great, thank
Hey,
you.
Jenny, can we kind of quickly go to that dashboard, COVID dashboard question?
Yes.
I need to clarify what they mean column 2. What data are they specifically asking about on the dashboard?
Right. So
So
they have the dashboard.
we just need to be able to answer that appropriately, but I'm not certain what they mean by column 2.
Okay, so we'll ask them to maybe clarify within.
You know what, actually, how about this? Is it okay if I just quickly kind of go over this?
Sure.
Is that helpful? Okay, so our COVID dashboard, we want to make sure that we're being transparent with our families and that we're giving them the most accurate, up-to-date information as possible. What we were seeing before we had this launched was, news agencies would put in a public records request, but they do it for different date ranges and they have different things that they were looking for. So then they would report something, but then another news agency would report something different. And people are like, whoa, what's happening? Well, it's simple. They were asking for different data points. And so we decided we're going to put out our own dashboard. We're the owners of the data that people are reporting on. If you read it in a news media, if you see it on a TV station, they are getting their numbers from us. The way that they're asking for it and the scope of what their story angle is might change the way that they're reporting on it. But in the end, the numbers come from us. So we wanted to give people an opportunity to see in almost real time, with not as much lag, this is what our COVID looks like. So you can access our COVID dashboard. It's historical, it's archived. You're going to be able to see quarantine reports, and you're also going to be able to see things as they come twice a week on Tuesdays and Fridays. They're asking how that data is reported. Well, it's simple. We are going off of the number of reported positive cases in the district. So what we can share with you, we will. We will not be sharing specific information that may lead to somebody's personal information, either student or staff. We can't share information that would lead to these affected individuals being identified. That would be in violation of their HIPAA, their FERPA, and it's just not ethical. So what we are sharing is twice a week, how many number of total reported positive cases district-wide. We do break it out by employees and students. We talk about how many quarantines there are. There are 2 types of quarantines, okay? There are quarantines that are a contact to a case, and that happens at school, meaning somebody in their school, whether it be an employee or student, they were around that person, now they need to quarantine. But there are also quarantines that happen from them going to a birthday party on the weekend, or them going out to dinner and receiving information that maybe, somebody in their party was impacted, somebody where they went was impacted. So there's at school and there's community. So reporting on that as well. We will also report which schools have been impacted by a reported positive case. For that period of time. All of these numbers are for those dates. Everything is date specific. So we're getting a lot of parents to say, well, I know such and such school had a positive case. Everything is date dependent. Okay, so when we received confirmation there was a reported case. So there's also what you have up on the screen right now is the quarantines. So there's 2 different sets of listings, okay? There's the schools that were impacted by a positive report or a positive case. Those are listed on the dashboard. The quarantine will give you what schools are in that date range that were impacted by quarantines and which type. So we're being as transparent as we possibly can be without risking somebody's, personal health information or identification. So that's something that we're going to continue to put out again every Tuesday and Friday. And hopefully that kind of clears up, A, where people can go to receive the data, and B, why it was important for us to be the ones facilitating the numbers. Because again, when you're hearing it from media or you're hearing it from a newspaper, in the end, they're still getting their numbers from us. Any outside organization, they're still asking us for those numbers. They just might have different date ranges or different reporting style that they're trying to get to.
Nikki, thank you so much for addressing my question. I do have a follow-up on that. And there was one point in the chat box about this not being cumulative data, so that's correct. This is just those date points and not cumulative from the previous weeks. Is that accurate? Okay.
That is
and then
accurate.
the second
However, no, go ahead.
Oh, well, the second part of my question is, how is the data collected? Particularly, my question being that would a staff member, for example, the contact on to case on school would have to come forward. As far as I know, there's no testing going on so that the school itself would collect that data. And then on the second column, the contact to case community household, again, are we relying on people to come forward to
We don't, yes. So
collect that data? So that's my question.
So the Department of Health will give us the confirmed positives. We have no choice but to rely on families to notify us that they have tested positive or they're having symptoms. And quite frankly, with what we've seen so far, we're having good luck with that. I want to knock on wood because I think Jenny said something powerful and important to remember. We all have a responsibility to take part in this. If we are sick, if we're having symptoms, we should let our schools know, we should keep our children home, things like that. There is a public responsibility as well to one another. So we do have to count on notification from homes, from households, but in some cases we're still, we still get notification from the Department of Health to confirm our positives. So our data is accurate and it is what we're using for our response team. Do you have anything to add to that?
I would just say, there's not a lot of hands in it either. What happens is our head of student services, Christine Moore, she's getting the calls on students. She's working closely with the principals when they're notified and the Department of Health when they notify us. She's calculating all the student data. Dr. Beth Fetty, who is head of human resources, is doing the same role, but on the employee side. And then what happens is we in government and community relations go in and we are looking at that data that they're entering, the two of them are entering and no one else, and we are pulling that data. And again, it's really important to know there is a lag in terms of what we report out. We leave at least a day, not at least, we're doing a day lag right now just to allow time to enter all the information. Because obviously Dr. Theddy and Ms. Moore are doing a lot of other things on top of COVID right now. So we want to make sure that their information is getting entered before we pull it and communicate it out to you all. So that's why anything you're looking at has a 24-hour window of lag.
Well, also keep in mind, I want to be very clear about this because we keep hearing the community ask for the words cumulative. You will never have a truly cumulative number because it changes all the time. Yeah. So if we were to give you the numbers, which you can go in, everything's archived, you can add up the cases and there's your cumulative number, but we're not going to be able to go back in and say, well, this case dropped off and look, this school picked up another one. So you're never really going to have a true cumulative because it will forever be changing as the illness is not a set thing. Some people are sick with it for 2 weeks. Some people are sick with it for 2 months. Sometimes they test negative sooner, other people don't. So we're trying to give people the best information that we can, that's the accurate information in the best time frame. And also keep in mind, we're going to count it. There are presumptive cases that have not been confirmed as positive. So again, the counts change. So there needs to be a little bit of a lag time there so we can make sure that what we're giving the community is accurate. So I think that's really important that it's as transparent as we possibly can make it.
Does that make sense?
It does. It does.
It's a lot.
All right, so are there any other questions on dashboard before we just kind of get off that entirely and let you guys take everything
Let's look
else?
in the chat room. We're not going to.
I think I saw a couple things pop up, but I couldn't read them.
Okay. Well, I mean, I think I really don't see anything else related to the dashboard at this time. I mean, we're seeing a good question is if exposed or we have direct contact to a positive case but not having symptoms ourselves, what is the social responsibility to report or quarantine?
Well, I mean, honestly, and I'm thinking everybody else would probably say the same, if you know you were a direct contact to a case, to a positive case, even if you're not symptomatic, that doesn't mean anything. You should be quarantining and you should be reporting that.
COVID is presenting in a numerous, as we're all hearing.
I mean, some
it's
people will
presenting
never
without
have symptoms.
symptoms.
Yeah. So you might never get symptoms, but you could pass it to somebody else.
The other,
unknowingly.
I think the other important thing that our parent leaders might not know, and that we have learned in our relationship with DOH, there's been questions about, especially with our employees, why don't you have them tested before they come back? If they've tested positive, they go out on quarantine, how are you allowing them back without testing them again? Well, it's a really good question, and here's the answer. After that 2-week period, that 14 days, you're no longer contagious, but the virus still lives in your system for up to 3 months potentially, and longer. What they're finding is the virus is there, and you could, if you test again, you could test positive again, but you're not contagious. It's called shedding. So the virus is shedding for 3 months and longer is what they're finding out. So that's why we're not testing. We're not asking our students to test before they come back into the schools, or our employees, and why we're relying so heavily on that 10 to 14 day window of quarantine.
Well, and just one last thing, and then I think we should just let it let leading and learning move on with learning things. Just one thing to note for the parent leaders: we don't make medical decisions. That's the Department of Health's responsibility. We don't create the guidelines surrounding a global pandemic. That's the CDC's responsibility, and we're working closely with them because we're the experts in the business of education. They're the experts in dealing with a global pandemic. What we have to do is work together, and that's what we're doing. So if there's ever a thing where we're not requiring a test, or there's a certain quarantine period, it's because we didn't make that up. We're getting that from the experts that are dealing with this virus.
Okay, thank you so much. I know these questions are hard, and I know we still have more questions in the chat room too. What I think we'll try and do is let's try and move forward with some of the questions that we have already. And like I think I stated in the chat room, Javon and I will go back over this, and we will try and clarify the questions for you and send them out in an email to everyone. So the next question, Javon.
Why are there so many virtual platforms being used? You can use Zoom, Teams, Google Classroom. Why so many options?
I think that they probably gave so many options because our schools are using so many different platforms. And I tell you, to teach virtually and then have students in the classroom as a hybrid model is probably the most difficult thing on our teachers. It's a lot of new learning for them. And so to force them to use a platform that they are not comfortable with, if they have a comfort level, that takes away at least that portion of the added learning. And so we've left it up to our schools and to have that choice because of that. And some of our teachers were doing Google Classroom prior to it, so we would hate to say, no, you can't use that anymore. When the students were comfortable with it, the teachers were comfortable with it. And so because of having so many platforms being used previously, we didn't want to restrict that.
Great.
Thank you. Okay, next question.
Oh, I just found a typo. How many people have looked at this? Anyways, it should say, what cyber safety measures are in place to prevent Zoom bombing? Or people that should not be in the Zoom call, joining the Zoom call and wreaking havoc.
Well, I can speak for that. I know that they do have the waiting room, but a memo just went out to all of the principals saying that our educational technology department has put another level of security in on Zoom where the students actually have to log in prior to getting in now. And so that just went out this week to principals, and that is in response to that problem. I don't know how widespread it is. I've just heard it from a couple people, but I'm sure there's more out there than what I'm hearing from my schools. So that layer of authentication has been added for security purposes.
Fantastic. Could the district make a step-by-step video tutorial showing families how to navigate the different programs? So our kids are very savvy using Google Classroom and Launchpad and Focus and Zoom and Teams, but our parents, this is their first time. So are there any plans to create those videos?
I can take this because Kat and I loved this idea. Our educational technology team would need to step in and assist with us, and we can certainly do something like that. But I can tell you that right now, it does exist for Focus, by the way. But we will look into this. Right now, our ed tech team is dealing with a tremendous amount of work, as you could possibly imagine, with the e-learning platform, and obviously security and everything else, and device distribution. But we do love this idea, and we will look into what we can do to further provide tutorials for our families.
Thanks.
And just so you know also, the Tech Tools for Parents, that is on the website, and that's some initial videos that they did. Also, a lot of my schools have had teachers prepare videos because they've shared them with me, and they are in learning it themselves, they're preparing videos for parents. So I know that even though you might not see it district wide, it is happening in many of the schools that videos are going out to support parents.
Bless our teachers.
Yep, and
Bless
we can try to gain some access to those so we don't have to reinvent the wheel, and we can share that out. So we'll definitely look into that, and it would be shared out on our COVID-19 page, and we'll announce as we go
And
any new information.
Yeah, the tech tools that Dr. Mila specified are also on the COVID-19 resource page. We've tried to make that your place where it's your one-stop shop for everything, from CDC guidelines to tech tools for e-learning. So as we find some things, or Dr. Mila, if you've got some good examples that might be able to be used more broadly, maybe she can share that, and we'll keep it all listed on that page. So we really give parents one place to be able to find things.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Why do we not have dedicated e-learning teachers at all grade levels, so K-12?
Well, in elementary, every single grade level has an e-learning teacher. Now, sometimes they're hybrid, and that is because of class size. We have to meet those class size averages, which forces us sometimes to take a classroom that is strictly e-learning and have to put some students in face-to-face and make it hybrid. So the class size is what's dictating that, but every single grade level we are doing e-learning in. If there's any, I haven't heard that there's a grade level that doesn't have any e-learners, but I guess there might be one out there, I don't know.
Great.
Ms. Bowman, did you have anything to add for secondary, or is that the same answer for that? Okay, we'll just move on.
You want me to take that just a little bit, Javon?
Oh, sure.
I'm not saying I know everything here, but I can tell you that what I've heard for secondary is, remember, kids change classes multiple times, and they could have keyboarding, or they could have, sculpting, or, whatever the case may be. There are over 500 courses offered for secondary kids. So if you have 500 teachers for all of those courses, if you wanted to have a specific e-learning teacher for those things, you would have to add another 500 teachers. And I think that it's, not a surprise to everyone that, teachers are hard to come by. And so that might give parents just a little bit of insight into why the hybrid model is a necessity. But if you really think about it from the staffing perspective, to be able to offer that kind of program for e-learning for secondary, we don't have another 500 teachers to come in and teach those individual classes. And I just want to give a shout out really quick. I think all of us, I have a high schooler, our teachers are doing an incredible job of doing both teaching at once. It's they've really stepped up, and we're really blessed in Brevard to have some teachers with great attitudes and great work ethics. So hopefully that explains a little bit about that, and I might have been wrong.
That's great.
She can correct me if I was wrong.
I send my daughter's teachers little gifts every single month, thanking them for what they do, because they're working miracles.
Yes, they are.
Okay, what's the plan for preventing overcrowded classrooms when e-learners return? But I think we've kind of already addressed that one, that we're still having to abide by classroom size amendment. and the e-learners are still counting just like a physical learner would be. Am I right on that? Anyone want to add anything else to that?
You are right on that in secondary. Because our teachers, we don't have, I know in elementary they have dedicated e-learning teachers, I think. I'll let Carol talk about that. But in secondary, we do not have dedicated e-learning teachers. They are doing it with part of the students that are assigned to them. So part of either their 22 or part of their 25 is sitting at home. So those kids are already counted.
Great.
And as we have, if we do have just e-learning teachers, as students come back, there might be a need for them to go hybrid because we've got to stay within class size. We can't have a class sitting with 40 some kids and another one with 10 just because there's only 10 e-learners. So we would have to adjust accordingly to when the students come back.
Fantastic. How will testing be proctored for e-learners this year? So that
I'm assuming that are we talking about our FSA?
I think it's some of the diagnostic tests as well.
Our diagnostic at the secondary world is through, and I'm sorry, I had to go see Dr. Sullivan, so I don't know if some of this has already been answered or not, but I'm back now. We're doing it through Reading Plus, which is done at home. And the program has the ability to see if kids are clicking too quickly, like Christmas treeing it, and we'll stop them, and the teacher will be notified. Our MAP program, which is for math, they have to come on campus to take that test so that it can be proctored. And then our FSA will need to be done on campus, and it will be proctored on campus. Some schools are saving some of their CARES Act money, and they are doing e-learning testing before school, after school, Friday when kids aren't there in the afternoon, and also on Saturday, so that they can have an environment where the e-learners do not feel as though they have to interact with the germs of the kids that were there during the day.
Great.
And the same thing at elementary, our iReady, we prefer that students who are e-learners come on campus, and we've given them opportunities to come on to take it, but they can take it at home, and we've done some training for parents on what a diagnostic is all about and why you shouldn't help your child because it gives false levels to the student, and then we're really not helping your child remediate where they need it. So same thing. I'm sure as FSA gets closer to, we'll be getting a lot more guidance from the state that we'll need to follow relative to what we can do and what we can't do.
Super.
Can you also address FSA while we're, what you know about FSA at this point?
FSA at the secondary world is going to be done on campus, and it will be done similar to what I talked about with MAP, where the e-learner students, I mean, they can come on campus and do it with their peers, but they also will have the before school, the after school, or the Saturday that they can pick.
Okay.
And the same thing with, with elementary. We've not been given any other guidance from the state that says otherwise. So unless we hear otherwise, it will be done on campus. It's got to be, unless we hear otherwise from the state.
Okay, and I think this next question is for Ms. Bowman. What options do students have to make up those EOC exams from last year that they were unable to take or were suspended?
They are in the middle of doing that right now. Our normal makeup schedule, we have fall and winter makeup days, and we are in the middle of the winter makeup days right now, and it's kind of weird. We're still calling them makeup days, but they're really not, because the kids who didn't get assessed in the spring are actually, this is their first assessment. And so the schools are doing it right now.
Great.
We will do it again in the winter. And then of course they can test in the spring. However, for the algebra EOC at the secondary level, which is the biggie, because that's when you got to pass to graduate, there are a lot of other options available or other ways to get a concordance score. A student could take the algebra EOC and get a 3 or above. They could take the geometry EOC, which geometry is the class that comes after algebra 1. So if they're sitting in geometry this year, they could take the geometry EOC if they get a 3 or above. That's going to count for their algebra. And there are scores that you can get on the SAT and the ACT, which both allow you to not take the EOC. And now they have added the PSAT. So there are a lot of other options that kids can use to get a passing score. And I'm not going to quote a score because I don't have it right here, but there is a score that you can get on each of those tests, and it'll count as a concordance score.
That's fantastic. Great options.
And can I just say, we're getting a lot of questions in the chat box about FSA, but we're not there just yet. So I would imagine, you know, Javon and I will look at those and see what we can answer in our follow-up email to all of you.
And that could be another meeting that we hold as
Yeah.
time gets closer with all the new information. So everyone, whether e-learner or brick and mortar, is all on the same page of the expectations. This one's come up quite a bit. So why do sports that involve close contact continue to be allowed, but elementary students can't have recess on their new playgrounds? I don't know. It's kind of a hot potato, probably.
Well, I don't know if Dr. Miela wants to weigh in or anybody else, but all we can tell you is that our administrators have done a really, really good job of helping to plan activities that will keep kids spaced out whenever possible at recess. They're giving them activities to do. Even if they, for some reason, have to be indoors that day, we understand this is not an ideal time. It's not an ideal option, okay? Especially for kids, you know, wanting to use the playground. We fully understand that, but we also need to be able to sanitize playground equipment, and it would need to, it takes time and people, we need to make sure that we're doing it in a responsible way. So please understand the kids are still getting, they're required to have, I think it's 180 minutes, if I'm not mistaken, a week of physical activity. They are getting that. The setting might look different. The methodology might look a little bit different, but they are still getting that. We are still meeting those requirements. We just aren't living in an ideal world right now. And our kids are, unfortunately, you know, they're bearing that too. So it's something that we're going to continuously keep looking at. You know, I don't know what else to say with that. It's one of those, it's a hot potato question. It's a hard one. We're not going to please everybody. It's not possible.
Gotcha. And for the sake of time, we do have another presenter waiting on the line. So we just wanted to go to one last question. And again, Jenny and I will follow up with other answers, but this one came through over and over and again. And parents just really want to know, when can they volunteer again? Will there be a point in our reopening plan where we can start letting parents come back on campus to help our schools?
And I think it all goes back to, we're going to continuously reevaluate. And right now we're being everything we're doing is for the health and safety of our students and staff. We are not letting non-essential people on campuses at this time, but our volunteers have always been essential in the fact that there are other ways that you can support. I know it sounds silly to say, but we really could use some substitute teachers, and that's an amazing way to give back. So if you haven't thought about that, that is a way that you can, but just know that we want to get our volunteers back in our schools as badly as they want to come back. And it's something that we're going to continuously reevaluate, just like recess, playground. None of that goes unnoticed by our leadership team. They are always talking about it. And as soon as it's as safe as possible, that's when it will happen.
Yep, the board's been talking about it at board meetings. You know, our volunteers are extraordinary and we need them back in our schools, but we want to do this once again at the right time and be responsible about when we let them back in. But again, I mean, even if you don't want to sub, you know, talk to your teachers about how you can help them out from afar. It doesn't necessarily, they might have a handle on making copies, but they still have to organize things with their families, especially in elementary school. So there may be opportunities to be that kind of virtual room parent. So I would say talk to your teachers, see how you can help.
That's a great suggestion. Great. So here's what we've learned. We've learned that maybe we need to have our more normal time in these meetings. We should make it perhaps a 2-hour meeting. Again, this was a learning experience. I know all your questions may not have been answered, but we're going to sit down and go over them all and see if we can find answers for them, okay? And ones that maybe, I know Dr. Mella's been answering some questions while we've been talking. But right now we want to sort of turn this over for you. And it's time to take care of you. And we are so pleased to introduce Stephanie. And she's going to share from Counselors for Change. Stephanie Bird is going to share some tools for you to take care of yourself.
Thank you, Jenny. I'm really happy to be here. And I just want to get everybody to take a minute or two to shift gears. That was a lot of information. And now we're going to dedicate the remainder of time for your wellness. So I want you to feel your feet on the ground, the chair supporting you, and just take a couple breaths. We're often telling people, oh, just breathe. And there's great power in the breath because it lowers our stress levels, our cortisol. So just do that right now. And with a show of hands, how many of you are feeling a sense of balance in your lives right now? I notice my hand's not up. So, and a lot of hands aren't up. So as Jenny mentioned, we're all having to juggle a lot, making it pretty likely that we're struggling in one or more areas of our own wellness in order to attend to some other areas, and especially other people. The mere fact that you're here indicates that you're a helper just by nature. So your focus tends to be outwards towards serving others, and therefore we're at greater risk for struggling with self-care. And so with that in mind, and before I go on, Jenny, how much time do I have? Are we ending at 11:30?
Well, that's what we said we were going to do, but
okay, I'll be mindful of time.
Our family, if you can go extra, we understand people might have other plans. If they need to leave, that's fine. Remember, it's being recorded. We'll also send out the slides, so we'll get them caught up.
Okay.
Thank you.
So I'm going to start with the slides and then loop back around if we have more time. But with that in mind, that whole self-care piece in mind, we want to be models for our kids, our students, our families, and teach them balance. And the best way we know to teach is not through our words, but through our actions. So this simple wellness wheels of visual that can help us self-reflect on key areas in our lives and see where we're doing things well and we have some sense of balance, in areas where we need a bit more intention. And this is great to certainly self-reflect, but you can sit down as a family to do this. It's so easy to get out of balance, especially in the times that we're living in right now, where there are so many external forces grabbing our attention. And really, as parents, that state of balance is where we're going to have the most impact on our relationship with our kids. We're typically wired for doing, teaching, preventing, fixing, but it's really in the being that fully present parent when our kids come to us with questions, concerns, their own dysregulation, that we have a great power to attune to them and build that secure attachment that allows them to launch into fully independent, interdependent, happy, healthy people. So that starts with balancing our own lives and attending to our wellness. So this wellness wheel, I don't know how big everybody's screen is, and maybe Jenny can get it out to everybody. Lets us look at some key areas in our lives where we want to be focused on creating that balance. And for me as a mental health practitioner, I'm always on the emotional end because that ties into everything else, including our physical well-being. And over on the side here, you know, the emotional component has to do with commitment to self-care, building up those coping skills, increasing self-awareness of emotions. We know when we're tuned into our own emotions and we know how to regulate them and what messages they're sending us, then we can have that presence for our kids to allow them to lean into their emotions instead of avoid them and fight them because they have cues to what we need. Every emotion tells us we need something. And if we can lean into it, we can listen to it and then get our needs met in healthy ways. So that emotional component, you know, not only leaning into our emotions, understanding our thoughts and the body sensations that go with it, but having a practice of gratitude, we know increases that state of well-being. And that self-reflection is important. So looking at that piece of the pie, when this wheel is balanced, like any wheel, it rolls well. When there's areas that are deflated to, you know, as we might want to think of it, then the wheel's gonna not roll so well. The physical component, you know, are we being mindful of attending to our medical needs, personal hygiene, exercise, nutrition, how we feel about our body, getting healthy rest and sleep habits, those social components. We know that strong connections are stronger indicators for longevity, how long we live, than any other factor. And right now, we have to be really creative about those connections. And we're also much more aware of how important those were in our lives, and they continue to be in our lives. Then there's the spiritual component, which is different for everybody, but an important part of our overall well-being. That may be faith in a higher power, time in nature, reflecting on the meaning of life, connecting to places of worship, and just having that overall sense of a greater purpose. The intellectual component, you know, ongoing commitment to education. As parents, we are constantly in relationship with our kids. We're in relationship with our loved ones. And a big part of education that we don't often get is relational education, the longest career we'll ever be in. It's from birth to death and probably beyond, is relationships. And so keeping up with, you know, increasing our awareness of what are healthy communication skills. How do I resolve conflict a bit better? How can I enhance my ability to connect and apologize to others? That's a big part of education, and we want to make that a part of our kids' education as well as the academic goals we have. And then occupation, you know, what's going on for career and educational goals. Vacations, certainly a part of that, having balance in our occupation. We want to be able to take those times to take breaks. And then, you know, it also talks about stability, growth opportunities, sense of fulfillment, and purpose. So when we think about all those, and certainly you can create your own wheel, if you'll just switch that slide, looking at the wellness wheel and self-reflecting, we can create a wheel. You can add components, take away components, just figure out what's important in your lives. If you're doing this as a family, figure out what is important in your kids and having that sense of balance. I know a lot of parents come to me and say, media is getting our lives, our children's lives, the life of the family way out of balance. And it really does require that sense of awareness and intention. How much time is being spent? What's healthy? What are we giving up for this? And so being able to label those sections of wellness, notice areas where we're balanced or maybe imbalanced, setting intentions for each section, and then reflecting. So it's this ongoing progress or process. We haven't arrived. It's just something that we're doing more frequently and self-reflecting on. And what we found is by making small adjustments and adding micro measures in each area, that has a huge impact. Oftentimes we're waiting, okay, we've got that vacation in December, we've just got to plug through till then. That usually isn't enough, because that vacation, we've worked so hard to get there, we're exhausted when we get there. It takes 3 days of the 5-day vacation to even get our body to relax. And then the 4th day, we're feeling kind of relaxed and, oh, this feels good, but I've got to pack and we're leaving Friday to get back on that, you know, busy wheel of imbalance. And so things that you can do take milliseconds, just like feeling your feet on the ground, feeling your back against the chair, taking a few breaths. What that does is it lowers cortisol. And typically, and cortisol is a stress hormone. And if we have a day where we're juggling kids, and at this age and phase, some of us are juggling kids, care for parents, careers, families, all sorts of things. So you wake up and that alarm goes off, in the day's stress levels continue to rise and go up. And if there's no small check-ins or adjustments throughout the day, then our kids and the people around us are getting us in this somewhat stressed out state. And so having those little micro measures that allow us to take breaks, like a few breaths. I know in between each appointment I have, I step outside, look at some green space, take a few breaths, get my head shifted into where I'm going to be next, and then come back in. And that takes about 2 minutes and makes a huge difference because it happens about 10 times a day. So instead of stress levels going like this, its stress might go up and then come down a bit and go up and come down a bit. So, I would encourage you, because you're helpers by nature, to just find some practices that get you to come back into a state of balance throughout the day and make it a 1 or 2 minute practice. Since we have a little time, I'm going to share this stop practice. Elijah Goldstein is a mindfulness-based stress reduction teacher. He's a counselor. And he created this STOP acronym. It's very simple, and it allows you to kind of sink into yourself and gain that sense of balance and presence in the here and now. Because usually what's happening is we're looking at what if, and then that's anxiety. It's focused on the future. The future doesn't exist. Or we're sitting in if only, which is, anger, resentment, uncertainty, regret. That's the past. So our head is usually juggling the future and the past, which keeps us from the only thing that we have in this moment is the here and now, the present. And so STOP is designed to get you back into the space of here and now, where you can attune to yourself, your kids, and so that you'll have that state of presence that they'll want to lean into. And so the S in STOP stands for stop. That's easy enough to remember. And then the T is take a breath or two, ground yourself. So you're just gonna take a few breaths, get yourself in the here and now. The O in STOP stands for observe. You're going to observe your thoughts, your emotions, and your sensations in your body. And the key of observing is you're doing it like a scientist. A scientist is inquisitive. There's no judgment. What we often do is the judge state of mind comes up. Good or bad? Is this thought good or bad? Is this emotion good or bad? Which then causes resistance and all sorts of stuff that we just aren't helpful. So we're going to observe with that state of inquisitiveness, our thoughts, emotions, and sensations. An example of that might be if, let's say, I'm in the middle of trying to do homework with one of my kids and I'm getting a little flustered because I'm getting frustrated. I might stop, take a breath, observe, what are my thoughts? Well, I'm getting anxious. I'm feeling that tension here. I'm thinking, oh no, we're not going to finish this. I've got to go do dinner, da 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 da. So I've got those busy thoughts going on. And then I'm gonna, go back to that sensation in my body. I've got this in my chest. P is proceed with compassion. What do I need right now? And in that moment, I might need to stretch out my chest and get that tension out. I might need to take a break so that I don't continue to rise. And then, my child's on his own roller coaster of frustration. I'm gonna get on mine, and then we're gonna be disconnected and I'm not helping him regulate. And so figuring out, how do I proceed with compassion? I might take a break, might take a breath. We might ask somebody for help. But it's really about pausing in any given moment, whether it's a joy-filled moment or a stress-filled moment, to bring our mind into a state of awareness so that we can learn to be more present instead of juggling the, what ifs or if onlys, or just going through life with just less awareness because we're always in the state of doing and fixing and teaching. So that can be a really simple practice. You can find his stuff on YouTube, I'm sure, where there's free guided audio meditations. It's something that you can teach your kids to do, but it's really, you know, just remember that STOP acronym. Stop, take a breath or two, observe your thoughts, feelings and sensations, and P, proceed with compassion, because all of that, our thoughts, emotions, and sensations, cue us in to the fact that we need something in the moment. And if we don't listen, they'll just get louder. So being able to tune in before they get too loud is a helpful way to navigate life with a bit more presence and balance. So I'd be happy to answer any questions. It looks like we have a minute. Hold on one second. The social problems in our country are driving some stresses. Jenny, I can't see, I see a question, but not the whole thing. Ah, there it is.
I can read it for you. The
Okay.
social problems in our country are driving some stresses for our students. How are our schools planning to navigate through times like these? What communication plans are in place to keep our students calm? So Stephanie, answer that within with your picture, and then we can try and answer it through the school lens as well.
Through my, you know, what our kids are, I'm going to be my kid's greatest influence. You're going to be your kid's greatest influence. Certainly schools support that. And I know that the schools are being intentional about incorporating mental health now, which is awesome, because it's such an integral part of being able to navigate every stress we'll ever be faced with. Social problems, we want to be able to certainly teach empathy, compassion, awareness. I know the first few assignments in my kids' classes this year seemed very intentional, addressing social problems. I have an 8th grader and a 10th grader in Brevard Public Schools who had assignments based on social justice, activism, and awareness. So I'm not, you know, I know that their school's doing that. I'm assuming that BPS has some impact on that particular school doing that.
And I can't, from my position, I can't really speak to that, but I do know that on a school-to-school basis, this was being addressed in different ways, and of course in an appropriate developmental way with our different age groups. I don't know if Dr. Mella or Ms. Bowman have anything to add to that.
I'll chime in, and then certainly if they had something to add, but the communication plans in place to keep our students calm, we have to be calm. This whole wellness wheel has to do with recognizing our state of distress so that we can regulate it. Our kids look to us, and we want our kids to lean into us as the adults. And one of the things when I'm doing parent workshops is the relationship with our kids. Certainly we want them to do well in whatever grade they're in. We want them to get into a good school. We want them to do well socially. Our most important or powerful influence in that is our relationship with them. And when we're regulated, they're going to lean into us. If we're stressed out, out of balance, at our wits' end, quick to escalate or shut down, then they are less likely to lean into us. And I'm a hiker, and I always think of like being in the woods. And if I'm in the woods, I want a really solid compass and a strong compass heading. I want to know how to orient when I'm in the woods so that I don't get in freak out mode when I'm lost in the woods. And better yet, hopefully I don't get lost in the woods. But if I'm lost in the woods, if I've got a strong skill of orienting myself and a solid compass heading, and I know where north is, then I'm going to be pretty confident that no matter where we are and how disoriented we might get for a moment, I can get us out. And if you're lost in the woods, You want to be with someone who says, hey, we've got it. I know where North is. We've got supplies. I know how to build a shelter. We're good. We're going to navigate this together. I know that's who I want to be lost in the woods with. I don't want to be lost in the woods with somebody who is freaking out saying, oh my gosh, we are never going to get out of here. We're all going to die. You know, we're lost and this isn't good. Our kids aren't going to lean into that, and they're not going to lean into the person who just shuts down and goes and sits on a log by themselves and doesn't speak. And so teaching our kids how to remain calm in the midst of social stresses or any other stressors, certainly we can teach them some skills like the wellness wheel, and there's a million others, but we teach best by modeling. And so checking in with our own state of being, our own state of balance is going to be our greatest tool in doing that. So supporting ourselves as the parents, supporting our teachers, supporting the schools, and creating that state of calm to help our kids who have a great excuse for not regulating. Their whole prefrontal cortex isn't wired yet, and that's the part that helps us navigate that emotional state and the state of thinking and presence. Ours is fully wired. So we've got to work really hard on maintaining that. And we're also human, so I can raise my hand. I get dysregulated like every other human. It's just a matter of checking in and saying, okay, what was that about? Where am I feeling imbalanced? What do I need right now? How can I loop back around to that kid or student and say, hey, I really apologize. I had just gotten a state of distress, took a few breaths. I'm in a better place now. Let's move forward in a healthy way. So I don't know if that answers your question, but
I actually think that's a perfect way for us to sort of leave this conversation. And you made me think, Stephanie, that when we're feeling this way, going to the stop way, you know, and kind of pulling yourself back together is so important. And it's okay.
Yeah.
I think we've all been having some bumps in the road, all of us, and it's okay. But we do have children, and we really need to do our work so we can be the best for our own children. Yeah. So that's
and I think
sure.
also that it reminds me of the zones of regulation, the program that we have in a lot of our schools, where students first have to learn to identify how they're feeling before they can help deal with that feeling.
Right.
And so we do that in a lot of our schools. It's called different things, but a lot of our faculty has been trained in that.
And I can just see from the comments we're getting, Stephanie, that this has been just the perfect conversation for our families and for our parents today. So I thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Truly do.
And Jenny, I remembered somebody was asking about volunteering. If you can't go into the schools right now, Counselors for Change is always looking for volunteers. We're not just counselors, we're parents, educators, students, and the goal is that we are working together to increase mental health awareness. And we have a couple initiatives that we want to implement and that we are implementing to support the schools. So if you want to support that mental health component for your kids, we would love to hear from you. And it's counselorsforchange.org.
Great. And I will send that out in an email, follow-up email. Thank you.
Great.
Thank you, Stephanie. Great suggestion. And Javon just has a couple announcements.
Oh, I get to do this part? Okay, so since it's the new way of work, and we really want to be here for you all, have a better idea of what's going on and how we can support you, we're going to try something that we've heard other places doing around the country, a nighttime phone call. So it's kind of like, I won't say happy hour, and I won't say story time, but we're going to call it a relax and chat. So we're going to try this on Thursday, October 22nd from 7 to 8 p.m. It'll be a Zoom call, and we're not going to have a PowerPoint. We're not going to be pushing any one topic. It's just going to kind of be a listening session, a support session for adults, parents, caregivers, to just try and build those relationships and build our support networks as we navigate this school year. Jenny, anything to add?
I'm really looking forward to it because I'm finding one of my jobs is I support our elementary counselors, and when we come together and we share and find out that we're not alone in our struggles and even maybe some of the great things that are happening, I think it brings comfort. So we're really excited about it, and we want to offer this to you and anybody who's interested. So it doesn't just have to be you. You can forward this to your friends, your neighbors, anybody who would like to be a part of the call. And then we also want you to know that October the 2nd is our next parent leadership team meeting. And we're probably going to go back to 2 hours. I think that's probably a safe thing to do. And I can tell you, I'll give you a little teaser. On that call, we will be hosting our superintendent, Dr. Mullins. So we look forward to that as well.
And invite a friend.
Yes.
Invite a friend. Share that link with folks. We don't mind if they're not officially a parent leadership team meeting. We want more people, the merrier.
Yes, this is for everyone who has an interest in Brevard Public Schools, really. So, well, we thank you so much, and we wish you well. And we will look forward to seeing you in just a couple weeks. And thank you for participating today.
Thanks for sticking with us.
And thanks to our presenters and our experts. We thank you so much. We miss you all. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.